The glittering lights of the entertainment world often blind us to the profound human struggles that occur just behind the velvet curtains, where fame and fortune offer no protection against the universal vulnerabilities of the human heart. In an era dominated by carefully curated social media feeds and perfectly orchestrated public appearances, it is easy to forget that the celebrities we idolize are ultimately bound by the same emotional complexities, fragile connections, and quiet heartbreaks that define the ordinary human experience. When a high-profile romance captivates the public imagination, it becomes more than just a relationship. It transforms into a modern-day fairy tale that thousands, if not millions, of people invest their own hopes and emotions into. We watch these famous couples navigate the highs of their careers, celebrating their collective victories and believing that their bond is entirely unbreakable, forged in a unique fire that ordinary life cannot touch. Yet, history has shown us time and again that the brighter the spotlight shines on a partnership, the deeper the shadows can grow within the private spaces they share when the cameras are finally turned off and the applause fades away. Before we delve into the intricate and deeply moving details of this unfolding story, take a brief moment to subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you never miss an exclusive update on the stories that shape our cultural landscape. The narrative of enduring love in the fast-paced world of music and digital media is rare, making the moments when that foundation begins to fracture even more jarring for the public to witness. For nearly a decade, one particular couple stood as a beacon of unconventional success, resilience, and raw honesty, captivating an audience that admired them not just for their individual talents, but for the fierce, unapologetic loyalty they seemingly displayed toward one another through every imaginable trial. They built an empire on the foundation of transparency, regularly sharing the gritty realities of their pasts and inspiring others to believe that true redemption and lasting partnership were possible, no matter where you started in life. This collective belief made the sudden, quiet shifting of the tides in their relationship all the more surreal for those who had followed their journey from the very beginning, creating an atmosphere of intense speculation and profound empathy as hints of trouble began to surface in the most subtle of ways. The initial signs of a rift are rarely loud. Instead, they manifest in the quiet absences, the missing pieces of a familiar picture that eagle-eyed observers inevitably begin to notice when something is fundamentally amiss. In the modern landscape of celebrity culture, fans have developed an almost instinctual ability to read between the lines of public appearances, decoding the unspoken language of physical gestures and missing symbols that often signal the beginning of the end. When a prominent figure, known throughout the industry for wearing his devotion proudly on his sleeve, suddenly appears before thousands of cheering fans without the most sacred token of his marital commitment, the silence generated by that absence is absolutely deafening. Such was the case during a major mid-year music festival in the heart of Nashville, a city deeply intertwined with the couple's identity and history, where the stark absence of a wedding ring on a major performer's hand sent immediate shockwaves through the community. This single, unacknowledged detail transformed an evening of celebration into a breeding ground for rumors, as onlookers realized that the narrative they had believed in for so long might be undergoing a drastic and painful transformation behind closed doors. This subtle but profound shift was not an isolated incident, as subsequent retrospectives by dedicated followers revealed that the iconic ring had actually been missing from public view for several months prior, stretching back to the early transition from winter to spring. The realization that a private crisis had been brewing in silence while the couple continued to fulfill their massive public obligations added a layer of heavy melancholy to their recent public history, highlighting the immense pressure celebrities face to maintain an illusion of normalcy even as their personal worlds are quietly fracturing. Meanwhile, the digital landscape began to reflect a parallel narrative of defiance, pain, and subtle messaging that further fueled the growing sense of unease among their massive global audience. Cryptic social media videos featuring striking visual imagery and pointed captions about intuition and things not adding up began to paint a picture of a woman standing on the precipice of a monumental life change, channeling her inner strength through bold fashion statements and unfiltered expressions of independence. These online interactions, while seemingly playful or cheeky on the surface, carried an underlying current of profound emotional processing, serving as the first public tremors of an impending emotional earthquake that was about to shatter the collective perception of this Hollywood romance. The contrast between the husband's quiet withdrawal and the wife's sharp, resilient digital presence created a palpable tension online, leaving fans suspended in a state of anxious anticipation as they waited for the other shoe to drop. It became increasingly clear to anyone paying close attention that the silence could not last forever, and that beneath the surface of these carefully dropped hints lay a deeply complex and heartbreaking reality that would soon demand to be heard. The atmosphere grew heavy with the realization that even the most seemingly indestructible bonds can succumb to the weight of unspoken burdens, changing life dynamics, and the relentless pressure of a world that demands perfection at all costs. This sense of brewing intrigue and atmospheric tension set the stage for a revelation that would completely redefine how the public viewed this beloved duo, proving that the most difficult battles are often fought in the absolute quiet of one's own home, far away from the glamour of the stage. As the rumors intensified and the public clamored for answers, the true depth of the situation remained locked away, protected by a mutual understanding that some heartbreaks are too heavy to share until the dust has finally begun to settle on the ruins of what once was. The anticipation built to a fever pitch, setting the scene for an unforgettable moment of absolute candor that would shock the entertainment world and leave an indelible mark on everyone who had ever believed in their unique love story. The wall of silence finally shattered in the most intimate way possible, as Bunnie Xo chose the familiar, raw platform of her own wildly popular Dumb Blonde podcast to lay bare the devastating realities of her marital collapse. For years, the podcast had served as a sanctuary for unfiltered conversations, but no one in the audience was truly prepared for the emotional gravity of the episode that aired on that fateful Thursday afternoon. With a voice weighed down by the immense burden of recent events, Bunnie addressed the bombshell divorce from her husband of a decade, the country music sensation Jelly Roll, exposing a foundational flaw that had silently corroded their relationship from within. In a confession that stunned listeners worldwide, she revealed that despite their public image as a fierce, united front, they had never actually developed the ability to navigate healthy disagreements or manage the natural friction that arises in any long-term partnership. They were, by her own admission, the specific type of couple who desperately avoided outward conflict, choosing instead to suppress their grievances and bury their individual frustrations beneath a surface of artificial peace. This chronic avoidance created a toxic dynamic where Jelly Roll would constantly hold his emotions inward, while Bunnie simultaneously bottled up her own pain, building a volatile reservoir of resentment that she described as an absolute recipe for disaster. The profound irony of their situation was not lost on her, as she reflected on how they had spent years publicly preaching to their massive audience about the vital importance of being comfortable with uncomfortable conversations. For the first 8 years of their remarkable journey together, they had actively practiced what they preached, facing their demons side by side and maintaining an open line of communication that allowed them to conquer poverty, addiction, and legal struggles. However, the tragedy of their downfall lay in the reality that during the last year and a half, the explosive trajectory of their newfound fame and completely altered life circumstances caused them to lose their grip on that essential practice. As their lives transformed into a whirlwind of massive stadium tours, red carpets, and relentless public scrutiny, the quiet, sacred spaces required for deep, vulnerable communication began to disappear, leaving them estranged in the very home they shared. This emotional distance culminated in an explosive, fateful confrontation that occurred on Mother's Day, a day traditionally reserved for celebrating family and maternal bonds, which instead became the definitive endpoint of their 10-year love story. While Bunnie consciously chose to withhold the highly specific, deeply painful details of the argument itself, she vividly recalled the overwhelming wave of emotional exhaustion and absolute fatigue that washed over her in that exact moment. Looking directly at the Grammy-nominated artist, a man she had defended through thick and thin, she reached her absolute breaking point and delivered a devastating ultimatum, telling him to simply file the divorce papers and end the cycle of pain. In the intricate, unwritten code of their decade-long relationship, invoking the word divorce was recognized as the ultimate cardinal sin, a boundary that carried an unspoken agreement never to be crossed lightly. Bunnie noted with a touch of lingering bitterness that while her husband had casually thrown that specific threat around numerous times during past disagreements, it took on an entirely different, terrifying weight when it finally came from her lips. She emphasized to her listeners that she is fundamentally not the type of person who speaks without absolute intent or makes empty threats to score points in an argument, meaning that the moment those words left her mouth, both of them knew the foundation had permanently cracked. The devastating conversation ended with an agonizing finality as Bunnie immediately packed a single bag, turned her back on the life they had painstakingly built together, and walked out of the Tennessee mansion, leaving the music icon alone with the echoes of their final words. This dramatic departure was not merely the result of a single holiday argument, but rather the explosive release of a deep, suffocating sorrow that had been compounding for over 2 years due to a grueling, heartbreaking medical journey. Behind the glamorous exterior of award shows and chart-topping hits, the couple had been locked in a silent, agonizing battle to expand their family. A desperate quest that ultimately took a catastrophic toll on their emotional and spiritual well-being. When they made the conscious decision to try for a baby, Bunnie plunged headfirst into the exhausting world of in vitro fertilization, a process she openly described to her audience as one of the loneliest, darkest, and most isolating journeys a woman could ever endure. She extended her deep respect and heartfelt empathy to any family or couple navigating the labyrinth of fertility treatments, warning that the public only ever witnesses the beautiful celebratory reward at the very end of the process. Completely blind to the hollowed-out shell of a person left behind in the trenches, the aggressive hormone regimens, invasive medical procedures, and constant emotional roller coasters completely wrecked her on an emotional, physical, and spiritual level, slowly eroding her vibrant personality until she felt entirely unrecognizable to herself. At 46 years old, the immense biological pressure to produce viable eggs to create a child with her husband became a full-time war against her own body. A struggle made infinitely more complicated by a painful reality regarding Jelly Roll's own biological limitations. The situation intensified dramatically when medical testing revealed that the country star suffered from a low sperm count, forcing him to embark on his own intense regimen of heavy hormone injections and aggressive medications. This medical intervention transformed the singer's personality, inducing severe mood swings and behavioral shifts that Bunnie candidly described as turning him into an absolute nightmare to be around, fracturing their remaining emotional safety. Amidst this atmosphere of mutual physical suffering and psychological strain, the couple endured the ultimate devastation that any aspiring parents could possibly face, experiencing the profound, gut-wrenching grief of losing 4 distinct embryos throughout their medical journey. They successfully navigated 3 separate embryo transfers, but the crushing weight of multiple miscarriages, including the tragic loss of the twins they had desperately hoped to welcome into the world, shattered whatever resilience they had left. Bunnie confessed that the cumulative heartbreak of these continuous losses was utterly soul-crushing, leaving them both emotionally bankrupt and entirely unable to support one another through the fog of their shared mourning. The public confirmation of this private tragedy finally came to light on a somber Monday morning, when official legal records confirmed that the 41-year-old singer had quietly pulled the plug on the marriage. Citing the classic insurmountable legal standard of irreconcilable differences, Jelly Roll officially filed the paperwork in Williamson County, Tennessee, the very jurisdiction where the couple had shared their sprawling country estate. The legal documents revealed a clean mutual agreement to divide their substantial marital assets and debts, signaling an intent to avoid a prolonged, ugly courtroom battle, even as their personal lives dissolved. The stark reality of the situation was captured by paparazzi lenses that very same day as professional movers were photographed outside the Tennessee home, loading large boxes into trucks and providing a visual exclamation point to the definitive end of an era. The physical sight of moving trucks parked outside the couple's longtime residence served as a sobering reminder of how quickly a shared life can be dismantled when the emotional foundation completely crumbles beneath it. While the packing boxes were being stacked and loaded in the Tennessee heat, the broader public began to piece together the extraordinary, turbulent history of a romance that had defied the odds for so long before ultimately succumbing to the pressures of modern life. To fully comprehend the magnitude of this separation, one must look back to the very beginning of their journey in 2016, when Jason Bradley DeFord, known to the world as Jelly Roll, and Elisa DeFord, famously known as Bunnie Xo, first joined their lives together in a whirlwind Las Vegas chapel ceremony. At that time, their world was a universe away from the grand stages, multi-platinum records, and mainstream adoration that would later define their daily existence. Jelly Roll was a struggling independent artist, battling the heavy shadows of a troubled past marked by incarceration, addiction, and the constant threat of recidivism, while Bunnie was a fiercely independent woman navigating her own complex path in life. Their bond was forged in the fires of mutual understanding, a shared acknowledgement of human flaws, and an unwavering commitment to pulling each other out of the depths of despair. They became a symbol of redemption for millions of fans who saw in them a living testament to the idea that a person's past does not have to dictate their future, and that true love could bloom in the most unconventional soil. This initial chapter of their relationship was far from perfect, however, as the couple previously navigated a brief but painful separation in 2018. An early warning sign of the deep-seated communication challenges that would return to haunt them years later. Their eventual reconciliation and their deeply emotional decision to formally renew their wedding vows in 2023 were celebrated globally as a triumph of love over adversity, a moment that seemingly solidified their status as an unbreakable partnership. Throughout their decade together, the country music sensation had been open about his personal shortfalls, publicly admitting to instances of infidelity prior to achieving complete sobriety from hard drugs. An honesty that only deepened the loyalty of their fan base, as Jelly Roll's musical career experienced a meteoric, historic rise, culminating in chart-topping hits like Wild Ones and Somebody Save Me. The dynamic between the husband and wife inevitably shifted under the relentless weight of the entertainment industry. The grueling demands of stardom, constant touring schedules, and the continuous intrusion of the public eye began to systematically erode the private sanctuary they had worked so hard to build and protect. When the added emotional and physical devastation of their prolonged fertility struggles entered the equation, the burden simply became too immense for their marriage to sustain. The loss of 4 embryos and the grueling physical toll of multiple failed medical procedures effectively drained the emotional reserves they needed to survive the pressures of their fast-paced life. Now, as the legal process moves forward smoothly in the courts of Williamson County, both individuals are left to navigate the daunting task of rebuilding their lives independently, outside the comforting framework of the partnership that defined their adult years. Bunnie Xo continues to utilize her platform to offer a voice of unyielding authenticity, showing her audience that it is possible to find strength, grace, and resilience even in the immediate aftermath of a profound personal tragedy. Her willingness to speak openly about the dark reality of failed fertility treatments and the painful end of her marriage has transformed her personal heartbreak into a source of comfort for countless individuals facing similar silent battles. Meanwhile, the music icon faces the challenge of channelizing his deep sorrow and life changes into his art, continuing a long tradition of translating raw personal pain into the moving melodies that have connected so deeply with audiences around the world. The story of their decade-long union serves as a poignant reminder that love, no matter how fierce, passionate, or resilient, requires continuous, vulnerable nurturing to withstand the unpredictable storms of life, fame, and personal trauma. As this iconic chapter closes for both Jason and